Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our latest webinar. Today we're going to be discussing how to pass the instrument written test in less time, commonly known as the knowledge test as well. My name is Brett Kobe, and welcome to everyone. I'm coming to you from Batavia, Ohio at the Sporty's pilot shop. We're at the Claremont County Airport, which is where Sporty's has been since the early 90s. It's a great shot there of our airport on a nice spring day that we're all looking forward to as we continue on in February here in the Midwest. Fortunately, not too much snow this year, but still looking to the spring weather flying ahead. Of course, what we're focusing on here today is instrument flying, which can be challenging in the Midwest and further north this time of year with the icing conditions, but a great time to study up and prepare for the knowledge test and a lot of the ground school part of your instrument training. If you're fortunate enough to be in the South or out west or southwest, obviously you can fly pretty much all throughout the year. Might not get those nice IFR conditions, but good flying weather nonetheless. That's a shot there that we took doing some video work at in a 182 flying an ILS approach for some video recording, pretty much right down to minimums. And that's what instrument flying is all about, being able to utilize the airplane on days when weather is not as clear VFR, not those blue sunny skies, but still be able to get you from point A to point B. And the instrument rating is a task that a lot of people want to accomplish for various reasons, whether it's for personal GA flying to get more utility out of the airplane or a necessary step on the way to a professional pilot track as you advance towards the commercial pilot certificate. First, a little bit about me. Again, I'm at Sporty's pilot shop here at Cincinnati, Ohio area. Senior Vice President, been around since early 2000s, where I started as a flight instructor. Today, I'm an ATP and check airman here at our Sporty's Academy Flight School. Also a course developer, so oversee production of our training courses, which range from basic private training all the way up through instrument, commercial, multi-engine, and lots of other programs for avionics, etc. Active GA pilot, I like to fly, as in that picture there, 182. Also fly Piper Aztec for fun and for vacation, and also professionally in a Cessna Citation. So wide range of flying in my any given day here at Sporty's. Overview of the presentation, we're going to talk about how about the FAA written test, particularly the instrument, what it entails and what you're getting ready for. When should you take your test during your training and the training process? When should you prepare for the test? And how to effectively use a test prep course and study materials to get ready for it. Now, I'll mention also this is part of Sporty's IFR month here during the month of February, where we were focusing on anything and everything IFR, whether that's training towards a instrument rating like we're going to talk about today, or how to get more utility out of your current certificate. So if you're in any of those categories, I highly suggest you go over to sportys.com/IFR. We have lots of specials, lots of engaging articles, webinars like this today, podcast, quizzes, just all kinds of different ways to engage with instrument pilots, both in preparation and those that are currently rated. So first off, when we look at an instrument rating, what's the pathway? It's similar to what you probably did for your private certificate, and there's various components of the training process. There's the traditional ground school training, which today takes the form mostly online. Pilots like to use preparation software. Not so much the in-person ground school training that it was 20 years ago or 30 years ago. It used to be done in a classroom and cramming for a test in a weekend or a couple weeks. Today it's more self-study. And it also used to be more one-on-one with your instructor. And I see that occasionally at flight schools, but a lot of students today like to go the self-study route. Then of course, there's the flight training part that's getting ready and building up your skills in the airplane to fly solely by reference to the instruments, building on those skills that you learned as a private pilot, but flying obviously just with your head in the cockpit, simulating being in a cloud or a low visibility condition. So we have to build the flight hours and the cross-country time there. Of course, there's the FAA Knowledge Test, which, assuming the group here today is at least private rated, if you're working towards your instrument rating, you kind of know the drill there to some extent, but the content is all different, and it requires a different approach to studying for the instrument test than you did for the private and building on those skills. And then, of course, the FAA check ride, which culminates at the end of your training to actually fly with a DPE or FAA representative to earn your and pass your check ride and earn your certificate or rating in this case. As I mentioned today, and why we're all here, is to look at the knowledge test. And the goal of this whole presentation is not just to find a way to cram for it and just get through it, but it's actually to make it part of the whole training experience. And the goal here is to do that in less time, and that's what we're going to talk about. So what does the FAA Knowledge Test look like? Similar to the private, it's 60 questions, 3 multiple choice answers. You are limited to 2 hours and 30 minutes. And like the private, you have to achieve a minimum score of 70%, either pass or fail at that point, just like your private test. Some interesting stats here when you look at the pass rate of the instrument test compared to the private, for example. So most students pass this on the first time. 94% of students pass the instrument on the first time. And by comparison there, I put the private pass rate, which is 90%. So there's a lot of anxiety related to this test, but I think a lot of preparation goes into it. Students are well prepared, and as a result, really do pass it more than any other test just about on that first time, with an average score of 86%. And we traditionally see here at Sporty students passing their knowledge test and reporting their scores back to us in that high 80 to low 90% range. So that seems to be right in line with what we see in the national average. Here's a breakdown of the topics you can expect to see. This comes right out of part 61 with the percentage breakdown of those questions. You're going to see regulations questions. So that's going to be your basic rote memorization type questions. IFR and route and approach procedures, that would make sense. New types of charting and instrument approach on the back end of a flight. Air traffic control, very important for instrument flying, so some practical aspects there. IFR navigation, a big one here, you'll see the only chunk that takes up a minimum of 10% is weather reports, critical weather, wind shear, and forecasts. In recent reports we're hearing from students, there's a lot of icing questions on the test, which you'll find is a category of study in most test preparation software. Safe and efficient IFR operations, aeronautical decision making, and crew resource management rounds that out. And so each person's test is going to be a little bit different. You know, the test isn't the same for everyone, but there's some ranges there of questions that you can expect to find on your actual test of those 60 questions. Just like the private test, you're able to bring a E6B flight computer, and that can be mechanical if you want to go the old school route, or an electronic version like the Sporty Z6B. ASA makes a great one as well. And just like your private tests, they have to be reset prior to entry. So the proctor will typically take the batteries out just to reset it. And you can also bring a sectional plotter. Might sound backwards, but I really like this as a tool for a straight edge when you're measuring on the IFR and route charts. It can be very helpful to line up VOR radials and measure some of the crossing points that come up during questions. And I'll show some examples of those coming up later on. So don't just think to leave your sectional plotter in your bag because it's not a VFR test. Bring that along with you to help answer some questions. There's a unique supplement book. This is produced by FAA, which has all the figures and charts that are referenced on the test. You'll have access to that, and goes without saying, but that's going to be a paper book where most of your studying is going to be done with online reference materials, so keep that in mind. A lot of students, for that reason, do like to print out a lot of the figures and supplements in this book when they study. I think that's a great idea. Or you can actually buy a copy of the book if you'd like as well, if you want it pre-printed, or download the PDF, which is included with most courseware and from the FAA website to have that handy. And you'll be given blank paper and a pencil to help take notes along the way. So when should you plan on taking the actual test? Well, at a bare minimum, right, it has to be completed before you take the FAA practical test with the examiner or the check airman. But in my experience, having instructed in this space since the early 2000s, students are much better prepared if you do it towards the end of your training. A lot of these questions are complex approach questions. They are navigation questions. If you actually learn and do the flying part of it and experience the system, air traffic control, fly ILS approaches, fly LPV approaches, do some cross countries, you're gonna have a lot better time understanding the questions from a practical standpoint versus just understanding the theory before you actually get to that point. And I think, again, a lot of students get anxiety here and they wanna knock this out as soon as possible, and they're gonna cram for it just using a rote memorization type test product, and I think that's really counterproductive because you're focusing on the wrong side of what's going on too early in your training. So if you have that flexibility, definitely put it off. And I'm going to say put it off, but delay it towards later in your training to get some real world instrument flying experience. And as many pilots here who are in instrument training know that the first phase is really just learning to really hone those skills of flying by the instruments. And that's important in the flight training part of it, but that's not really going to help you for your knowledge test. It's when you get into that cross-country phase approach training flights, flying in weather, that you're really going to start to be more prepared. You'll be able to make more sense of the questions on a more comprehensive understanding level. When you do take the test, the results are good for 24 calendar months, and you have to be a minimum of 15 years of age to take the test. Now, how should you prepare? I'm going to go back to how I prepared, which was how most of the schools were teaching and most pilots learned. And I will say the period of the late 90s to the 2000s. And that's where you bought a book that had representative test questions from FAA. You got in that book and you just read question by question. You highlighted the correct answer, committed that to memory. And at that time, the FAA published all the questions and answers right down to the exact number, the exact value. So I had classmates of mine who would go in and just memorize the distance for a cross-country flight or the fuel burn required for a performance chart. They didn't know how to calculate the question or how to calculate the answer, but they knew what the answer was going to be on the test and they memorized it, and it worked. You know, a lot of students passed that way. When they actually got to the airplane or into the actual flight training environment, that whole process was completely useless because it was strictly just rote memorization to pass the test. But the FAA set it up that way, and that's how students prepared for it. Fast forward to today, though, the FAA no longer publishes all the questions. They publish a sample of maybe 60 questions through the PSI website, which I'll talk about coming up later. That's the official testing center. But the FAA doesn't publish the entire database of questions. And basically that was in reaction to what students were doing and preparing the old way. So now it's more important than ever that you actually learn the material, that you understand the questions, understand the bigger picture of instrument training, and prepare for the knowledge test in conjunction with your ground school and your flight training at the airport. Again, I've seen the pros and cons of this through the last 2 decades, seeing students now that pass with high 90s and students that fail, get below 70. And you can really see their studying approach and how they vary and why they get the outcome they do. And again, how that translates to them as an instrument pilot after they get through the actual training process. So we highly recommend here at Sporty's, and it's part of our flight school's curriculum. And we work with many other flight schools across the country who do it the same way and get the same proven results, is to integrate the knowledge test preparation through a more comprehensive course of study. What obviously we're going to recommend here today is the Sporty's instrument rating course that has been built from the ground up to support this model and support this way of training. This kind of all-inclusive approach not only prepares you for the knowledge test, but also for your ground lessons and your flight lessons. And as you get into the actual test preparation tools, it'll make you feel a lot more comfortable in how you answer the questions and kind of realize the bigger picture of what you're studying. So again, the key point here is to not treat this knowledge test prep as rote memorization. Highly discouraged from going out and just buying a test prep product just to pass the test. Consider that all-in-one, all-encompassing courseware. It'll help you learn those important concepts and dive deeper into challenging questions that'll allow you to think about why it's the correct answer and feel confident knowing that versus just a memorization of a topic. So what we're going to cover here today is how to prepare for that using Sporty's instrument rating course, where the core of that training is HD and 4K video training that goes well beyond just the test prep requirements. It's again, the comprehensive nature ensures that you are prepared for the knowledge test, but you're going to get that ground school and flight training along the way as well. We're all savvy instrument pilots here at Sporty's in addition to being instructors. We go out and fly in the system across the country. We do that for fun and professionally, and we like to convey those messages and those lessons learned in our courseware. And that's what you're going to find here, so that we meet the minimums of the airman certification standards, but go well and above beyond that, so that you can take advantage of technology, how to deal with weather, air traffic control, busy airspace, that kind of thing, much more than just your typical instrument training lesson of 3 instrument approaches. This course also includes several other supplemental materials, a flight maneuvers guide that will again help you prepare for your actual instrument lessons, full digital FAA handbook library, and then check ride prep, which will get you ready for the final check ride at the end of your training to do things like a mock oral and simulate that experience, getting questions asked of you by the examiner. I'll point out one thing here, and I'll bring it up at the end also. Again, being that this is part of instrument IFR month here at Sporty's, there is a promotional code we're offering that we're putting out here. So fly IFR. If you do decide the instrument rating course is the way you'd like to proceed, that'll get you $50 off the course. Regular price is $299, and that'll bring it down to $249 if you enter that at checkout from sportys.com. So what are the benefits for you for using a personal study course like this as a pilot training for their instrument rating? Biggest thing is the visuals bring those challenging concepts to life. When training initially, instruments can seem a lot like approach charts, which are two-dimensional, and route charts, two-dimensional, the cockpit looking at flight instruments. But when you can actually go out and see pilots flying in the system, it's really going to bring that all together to you so that when you go out and fly for the first time in those conditions, you've seen it before. You've seen what the approach lights look like breaking out off an instrument approach. You've seen the hazards of icing and why you want to stay away from it. You see what thunderstorms do and where they develop and how to stay away from those. So it's those real life flying skills that are going to really get, a part of the course that you're going to take away from that. As with any training course, and whether it's a private, instrument, commercial, currency, etc., it's going to save you considerable time and money. As an instructor, I can see here at our school when a student does follow the curriculum and follows the online courseware and self-studies, they earn their certificate or rating in much less time than the student who does not prepare ahead of time, ultimately saving money. With the expense of airplanes and fuel these days, that really adds up quickly. So the cost of a $299 course it really pays for itself in just a couple flight lessons. Again, better prepared for each lesson. And then the main focus here is the self-study for the knowledge test. So you can do that on your own time when you're away from the airport, and then spend your time, quality time with your flight instructor working on the ground lessons or the flight lessons, which is what really matters here in the end. The Sporty system also allows your instructor to monitor your video and test prep progress. And I'll show you how to do that once we get into the live demo. So you can link up your account with your flight instructor, and they can monitor your flight your lesson performance as it relates to the ground curriculum. So if they need to check that off for the flight school, they can also monitor your test prep progress. So if you have some questions, maybe you mark a couple questions, or you take some practice tests and you want to get some help on the questions, they're able to view those in their portal and then kind of make a plan of approach or plan of attack to work on that with you when you're back together. Again, the whole goal here is that you can focus more on the flight training side of things in the airplane while when you're at the airport, and then focus on the ground school to test prep on your own time. Signature point of the Sporty's instrument rating course is the flexible learning options. When you basically enable access to this and purchase into it, there's a one-time fee, and that gives you unlimited lifetime access. And that's important for many reasons. You're going to get lifetime test prep updates. So as we add new questions every month, you're going to automatically get access to those. As we add new video training lessons, you'll automatically get access to those. As we add new platform or software features, you automatically get access to those without any extra fees. Very important in this day and age when most software and services are subscription-based. We don't believe in that. We want you to have the best product forever, and we continue to stand by that and support that. The main access point is online, which is available in any web browser, but you also get access to a full-featured iPad app, iPhone app, and Android app. So you get to choose the course, the platform, wherever it makes most sense to you to take the course. A lot of students like to study and watch video maybe on their laptop or their smart TV, but like to study test prep questions on an iPhone or iPad. Everything stays in sync, so you can bounce around wherever is most convenient for you. And the smart TV apps have really brought this full circle for Sporties. That's where we started in the 80s when we first released a VHS cassette tape, I guess you'd call it, course. VHS tapes are long gone now, went to DVD, and now in its modern day era, available online and through mobile apps and smart TVs. But it allows us to deliver that high quality HD and 4K video content to the comfort of your living room. So with that, let's jump into the actual courseware and demo how we use and go about this training. So here we are, we're in the Sporty's instrument rating course. We're in the online version. It's going to be the best way for me to demo here today. And so when you're getting started, if you're just starting out from scratch, the place to go is the video training section here. As you can see on the left-hand side, there are 6 main chapters. Starts off in the building block approach. So just like you're going to find it at your flight school as you advance through your actual training at the airport. Starting off with the basic instrument flying fundamentals, learning the basics of navigation, and then getting into approaches, weather, cross countries, and advanced IFR flying techniques. So my recommendation here, before you even get into test prep during your training, go through all the video start to finish just in a linear order to get familiar with every detail and every part of the training part. Now, as you go through your flight training at the airport, you're going to go back and review certain sections. So when it's time for the ILS approach lesson, you're going to come back to that video. The GPS approaches, come back here. Holding, come back to the holding lesson. So lots of flexibility with how you train. But my biggest recommendation to anyone starting out is to just go through all the video training, start to finish, and engage with each lesson. For example, there are quizzes that are a part of each lesson. You can take review quizzes here that'll help you reinforce key topics from that content. There's reading involved to read the transcripts and related content that'll allow you to dive deeper into the related FAA handbook material. So the Instrument Flying Handbook, the Aeronautical Information Manual, FARs, and the Instrument Procedures Handbook. So just a lot of self-study initially to build that foundation for your training. One other thing I'll point out that we added last year that's really helpful, that can help with test prep also, is it helps you visualize and understand components like charts and system failures, is to get in here and experiment with our interactive scenarios. And what these allow you to do is bring the content to life. As something as basic as a IFR and route chart, as you'll see here. It's going to allow you to test your knowledge and learn more about that chart, which again, you'll be tested on during the actual FAA knowledge test. So here's an example of IFR chart symbology. It's asking here to tap on a symbol depicting a VOR airway, 4-panel chart. If I pick the wrong answer, it's going to tell me, nope, not right. Going to find the right answer, and it's going to tell you more information about that particular symbol. So while it might not seem like you're preparing for the knowledge test here, the training is built to kind of fundamentally prepare you for those concepts, so that when you get to the multiple choice questions, they're really easy and intuitive for you. A great way to get in, again, and learn more about approach charts, holding procedures, etc. So again, kind of go through all those as well with your video training before you actually get into test prep. Now, when you're ready to start the actual focused effort on your knowledge test, you'll come over here to the test prep section, and you're going to see a quick cheat sheet up top here. I highly recommend you read that and understand it, because it's going to be the same philosophy that I covered here today. And in order, that is basically to study each category of questions. We've got well over 1,000 questions in our database. And the worst thing you can do is go in and take an FAA practice test, which is this option here. You want to get through each question in a more learning mode, as we call it, scenario. Understand the question, understand the answers, and then you'll be able to dive deeper with the explanations and references, as you'll see. You'll then start to identify strong areas and weak areas through our analytics displays, which will allow you to, again, focus in and hone in on those weaker areas to make sure you fully understand those concepts. You'll be able to review previous sessions. And then once you think you have a pretty good grasp of all the questions, all the content, then it's time to start taking FAA practice tests to gauge your readiness for the actual test. Now, the FAA requires a 70% as a passing score. In this course here, our requirements to issue the endorsement to take the test, which is included with every purchase, is you must watch all of the video training first. So you'll see that measured here on the left-hand side, which you should have already done by this point. Then your next step again was to go in and study all the questions. Then once you're ready, you'll start taking practice FAA tests. And our requirements there are to score 2 80% scores or greater on 2 tests. Now that's the bare minimum. I highly recommend to my students to really strive for a 90 or better, to really make sure you're seeing all the questions and getting a better performance on the actual test. Again, kind of striving for that national average, which was 86%. I like to see 90% is really the goal there. But our minimums in the software itself are 2 80% test scores. And then once you complete that, you'll be able to request your knowledge test endorsement on the left-hand side here from the course. That button will unlock there at that point. One other thing before I dive into the actual study techniques is that you can use this button here on the left-hand side, share progress with my CFI. And that's where you can add your instructor's email address using this function. And then they will then see your video progress, what lessons you've covered, and your study session and practice test results. Okay, so now that we kind of have a big picture view of what we're trying to accomplish, the place to start here is start new study sessions. You have lots of options here, and don't let that intimidate you, because you're going to find these helpful for various reasons as you progress through your training. The place to start is the very top up here, specific categories. And this will load a view of the 2 types of studying you can do. You have question mode, which will present the traditional question and 3 multiple choice answers. And you also have the option for flashcard mode, which will present a interface similar to what you might see in Quizlet, for example, a representative of a traditional flashcard with a question on one side and the correct answer on the back. So an alternate way to study based on your preference. Suggest probably starting off here in question mode. And you've got 7 main categories here. These align with the areas of operation from the Airman Certification Standards. The ACS does dictate and guide the content and layout of the actual knowledge test. So we've aligned our categories for that. And then each sub-item here represents a task from the Airman Certification Standards. So as I drill down here, you'll see these when you have your ACS, which should be an integral part of your training and reference as you're doing ground training and flight training. These also correspond right to the same categories. So everything stays aligned and well organized with how you're preparing for the entire training experience. So we'll come in here and we will select a category. Let's say we're going to look at precision approaches today. You may just want to pick one category like this, 66 questions. Maybe pick a couple, try to get a session maybe of 50 to 100 questions. I wouldn't recommend just going in and selecting all the questions at one time. That can get kind of complicated and messy, but try to stay focused in a category and just attack that as you go about your study. Now, when you build the question, the session, you're going to see your questions listed here on the left-hand side. Here's your question at the top. You have quick access to the figure. Again, here we're looking at a digital version of that. When you're in the actual testing center, you're going to have the FAA supplement book with paper versions of this, but they're the exact figures you're going to find on the test. Pick your answer. You'll get instant feedback as to whether it's incorrect or correct. In this case, I chose the incorrect answer. Now, I highly recommend first, if you do choose the incorrect answer, read why it's incorrect to try to learn about it. And then come over here, and here's the correct answer. I'm going to read about why that is the correct answer, probably open the figure back up to learn more about it. Now, at this phase, I highly recommend you don't change your answer to the correct answer. Just go ahead and leave it as incorrect. We'll come to the next question. Okay, I got it correct this time, so that's good. That's what I want to do. Obviously, I didn't read the question or the answer, but just kind of showing you how the interface works here. I'm going to leave it correct in this case. And then I come to the next question. We're just going to answer A again, just for the heck of it. If I did get that incorrect, I'm going to leave it incorrect because I want the system to grade my initial results so I can get some kind of progress established here. If I just correct every answer, it's going to show me as getting 100% on everything and not really tracking the analytics on my strong and weak areas. So again, for that reason, as you go about these, pick your answer, leave that selected as you go about it. Now, if you want to, you can change your answer. You can change at any given moment here. But you'll see why in a minute why I suggest to leave that as initially suggested or initially selected. You have the option over here on the left-hand side to mark a question using the little windsock flag. So a question you may want to come back to later, study more, you don't fully understand, you want to ask a Sporty flight instructor, which is a service of the course. You can use our Ask a CFI function to get more information about a question or any topic, really, as it relates to your instrument training. Your instructor can also see marked questions, so lots of different uses there for using that feature. You can also use the mark or unmark button here in the console. Another great point here, each question has the explanation, but also has the link to the FAA reference material. So that if you feel the explanation really doesn't cut it or you have more questions about the content, click on that link. It's going to open up a new tab to the FAA handbook section of the course and load that reference material. So some questions you're going to know right away and have a good understanding. There's always some kind of topic or a specific subject a student struggles with. That's what that's there for. So you can come in and look that information up in more detail. You're going to find links here to Instrument Flying Handbook, the Pilot's Handbook of Aeronautical Knowledge, FARs, AIM, etc. Lots of advisory circulars also. So a very well-rounded approach to studying here. You're not memorizing answers, you're learning the material, and then using this as a self-study opportunity to even dive deeper if you feel that's necessary based on the content. So this had 66 questions. Let's go ahead and assume that we had finished all the answers. We're going to hit grade session and get a very, very poor score, but that's expected for this scenario. And we'll back out of here. And we'll leave the session. Now what you'll see after you generate some progress here in test prep is you'll start to build up some analytics. So on a very small scale level, I'm going to show a session I completed earlier. It's going to show you how you performed on various categories. So in this example here, we got a 91% across all these different categories. And this is an example I did just to build up some data. But you can see I answered how many correctly, how many incorrectly, if I had any marked questions, and the ability to start the entire session again. So lots of flexibility here as you complete sessions to go back and retake that session, or which I like to do a lot is just to focus on the incorrect questions. So as you complete a session, maybe you missed 10 or so, go back and start a new session just based on those you answered incorrectly to reinforce those weaker areas that you had some trouble with or did not answer correctly. Going to a bigger level of analytics, we can go here to advanced category breakdown. And this might take just a second to build up here, but it's going to show you over time as you complete a lot of sessions what your strengths are and what your weaknesses are. So in this case, I can see, we'll look at all sessions for now, this first column here. We got 83% in this category, 83 in this one, 74 in flight by reference to the instruments. Did really well in navigation systems, but instrument approach procedures, I was scoring in the 60s. And if I even drill further, I can get a tighter breakdown of specific subtopics from that category and see that I've really been struggling with circling approaches and precision approaches. So with that knowledge, I might go back to new study session, pick a category. You're actually going to see the same analytics here when I get into the categories. So if I go back, I think it was approach procedures. Yeah, you can see your same analytics here for all sessions. I can see that I should probably go back and study circling approaches and precision approaches. And what you'll see on the right side is your most recent performance from that category, last 3 sessions and all sessions. So you can start to see progress building up over time as you improve your performance there and do better and better. Now, just reviewing some other options you can do from a study session standpoint. You can do random questions. So maybe you're out somewhere killing time on your iPhone and you just want to take a 10-question quick test or quick quiz. That's a great way to use random questions just to study some material when you don't have too much time. Smart Study is a more advanced feature that will take the analytics data that we talked about, as well as questions you've missed, and build a session based automatically on your weaknesses. So again, maybe you don't have a whole lot of time to go in and research your category performance, but you just want to build a session based on past performance. That's what Smart Study is great for. Mark questions allows you to jump back in any question you've marked in the past to build a session based on those. Incorrect allows you to focus just on questions you've answered incorrectly. So once you answer a question at least correctly once, it'll never show up in that option. But again, a great way to kind of hone in on some of those areas if you don't have the time to fully analyze all your previous analytics. This is a great one here as you're getting ready for the final test. Let's say you've done lots of categories, or you think you have. You've done practice tests and you're scoring in the 90s. A great option here at the very end is to go back to questions I've never seen, just to make sure you've been exposed to every question in the database. So if we have 1,100 questions, let's say, you might pop in there and find a build a session of 20 questions. And that could be because Sporty's added new questions since you studied last. There could be a wide variety of reasons that could be helpful, but highly recommend you go back in and use that function at the very end just to make sure you've been exposed to every question. And then question search is great here. You can enter a keyword to pick up. So ILS, if you want to kind of zero in on the study session based on a different criteria, you heard a keyword, maybe another student mentioned, or a question that referenced a certain airport. It's a great way to go in and just find a certain question and build a study session based on that. So that's the high level view of the preparation process. After you're content with studying, then it's time to go in and start taking FAA practice tests. If you've done all that and you take 2 practice, you take 2 practice tests and you're in the low to mid 90s, you're probably good to go. Don't feel like you need to come in here and take 10 practice tests. You know, if you go through this methodical approach, the study sessions, and then the practice tests, and you're performing well, you've completed the video training, I think you're good to go at that point. So again, don't stress too much initially on this practice test. Do the study sessions, build the knowledge, and then take your practice test. Last thing I'll point out here, just while we're in the course, because so far we've focused on the ground and flight training in the form of video training, we focused on test prep. Last part here, as you complete your training, you have your knowledge test score in hand. Definitely come in here to the check ride prep flashcard section. These are questions built for the actual oral part of your check ride. Based on data, we've talked to DPEs, stage check airmen from Part 141 flight schools. It's a very comprehensive database of questions that's going to really do a nice job simulating the oral exam. So this often gets overlooked in this course, just talking with students. So for those that are interested and decide to go this route, just kind of give them that tip there at the end to use that flashcard option. Okay, so once you're all done with that, you complete the video training, get your 2 80% or higher test scores. It's time to get that certificate. You'll use the endorsement request function from the course, and you can do that again online, iPhone, iPad, Android. You can do the course on any of those devices start to finish, or bounce around as you see fit. Press that button and you'll be emailed a copy of your endorsement to take to the testing facility within a couple minutes. So if you complete this course on Saturday night at 3 a.m., that's just fine. You'll have the endorsement there in the middle of the night for you. I'm gonna wrap up here with a couple strategy items, some tips and tricks to best ways to approach the test taking experience. And take these tips and use them when you're doing the practice test as well in the course. So this goes really for any test, whether it's accounting, your senior high school final exam for history, or the FAA Knowledge Test for instrument rating. Answer the easy questions first and skip the hard ones. Just like your private test, there's going to be questions that you're going to see and you're going to know the answer to right away, just again, kind of based on that rote memory, not really an analysis or calculation. Might be a regulation or just a basic function of an instrument approach chart. But go ahead and answer those easy ones first. Save the more complicated ones for later in your session to come back and wrap those up. Another tip here kind of goes along the same way. Read each question twice before looking at the answer options. So don't get in that mindset of reading the question, reading the answers. I like to go through, and this is a good study tip also when using the course, which is to do just that. Read the question, maybe cover up the answers with a piece of paper, cover them with your hand, but formulate an answer in your head ahead of time before you actually get to reading the answers. Then look at the answers. Hopefully you've already come to the conclusion of what the correct one is, and then select that. For this reason here, we do have that flashcard option in the course as a study option. Actually, let me just bring that up real quick while we're talking about that, because it really goes along with that approach to studying. So if I go to start new session and we'll pick categories. So up here, instead of question mode, we're going to pick flashcard mode. And we'll do departure procedures. So now what you're going to see is just the question on the flashcard. And again, this allows you to formulate an answer in your mind before you actually see the answer choices. So come up with an answer in your head, and then the correct answer up here is in bold. So it's kind of a different way to approach the studying process, but allows you to just see the question, formulate the answer, and then see the answer in your mind. You're going to see a lot of questions related to en route planning on IFR and route charts and navigation charts, and they're going to use traditional VOR navigation, so you might need to find your position on an airway or a DME fix. Same thing here, don't look at the answer first, but bring the chart up and use your plotter on the chart there and draw some arrows, for example. Whether if you want to print this out, that might make it easier. When you're in the actual testing center, you'll have an overlay, paper and pencil to overlay on the chart, but try to find that point ahead of time based on your VOR position and your needles, and then go back, read the answers, and hopefully that lines up with what you're thinking, whether it's a certain intersection, a VOR, DME fix, etc. But again, calculate this ahead of time before looking at the answers and trying to make the answers fit to the question. A lot of times there's distractors in there in the question list from FAA that'll lead you down the wrong path if you look at those first. Same thing for approach charts. When it comes to that, these are very objective questions. So there's a very specific answer, whether it's a number, fix on a chart, etc. But read the question first, don't look at the answers. Come up with what you think the answer is. You know, in this case, the minimums for the ILS approach, and then read the answers. You can see there was 1,008 feet. You already knew that going into it. You see that answer there as one of the choices, and then go ahead and select that and move on. You're going to see some holding questions on the test and in our test preparation software. Now in the real world, when you're flying holding, All ATC cares about is that you stay on the protected side, stay within the holding area, stay at the right altitude, and you're in good shape. When it comes time to these test prep questions, they are expecting very black and white answers. So you're going to want to study the entry procedures from the Instrument Flying Handbook, which gives very specific entry thirds essentially for tiered, drop, direct, and parallel. So same thing here, draw the chart, draw the hold out there. Doesn't have to be fancy, but draw the hold, draw the radial, draw the turns, figure out what entry procedure you're in, and then select that answer. And that's a case there where maybe you're studying this question and you didn't understand the answer, why it was the correct way it was. In this case, we link back out to the Instrument Flying Handbook, where you could read more about those different sectors for how to approach a holding pattern. Now, when it comes time to schedule your tests, you'll need that FAA tracking number, FTN number, which everyone should have at this point from their private training, both their private knowledge test and the actual check ride itself. Located testing facility, you can do that at the PSI website, which is the official FAA's third-party testing provider, and the only one out there right now, faa.psiexams.com, to be able to find the nearest testing facility. You will create an account on the PSI website and register for a test time at that facility. And then you'll need to bring with you that endorsement. If it's, again, provided from an online course like Sporty's, you can print the one right from your course and bring that in. That's the official endorsement that the test proctor will be looking for. And bring your proof of ID, so government issued ID card or a passport to identify yourself. As mentioned, you could bring the E6B flight computer, bring a plotter or a straight edge to help along with the process. Again, thanks everyone for your time today. Looks like we went about 40 minutes or so. The product we were referencing for this was Sporty's instrument rating course, part knowledge test preparation, but much more than that, which is a comprehensive ground and flight school option. Highly recommend, if you haven't looked at it yet, go to sportys.com/courses. You can check out a demo. Again, this is IFR month, so we are offering $50 off the course. Use that code FLYIFR at sportys.com when you check out to save $50. That'll bring the price down to $249. And thank you everyone for joining today. And for more information, again, as I mentioned, that great content for Sporty's IFR month, head over to sportys.com/IFR. This webinar was recorded, so you'll have a recording of this up tomorrow on Sporty's YouTube channel. You'll also find that on the sportys.com/IFR IFR month page as well. On behalf of Sporty's, thank you very much. Glad to hear a lot of interest here today in the instrument rating. Again, whether that's for expanding your piloting skills as a private pilot just to get more out of your airplane, or you're on towards a professional pilot track. The instrument rating is just a great skill set to enhance your abilities as a pilot, whether it is, again, as a private pilot or to move on to the professional world and utilize that to carry persons and cargo for hire. With that, I'm going to wrap up, and thanks everyone today, and have a great afternoon.